We're all sick, sad, and wasted. We're all sick, sad, and wasted. You're not the only one.
Welcome to Redacted Tonight VIP. I'm Lee Camp. Tonight is a special episode. Considering the fact that last week we began officially bombing Syria, as opposed to whatever else we were involved in over the past years before that, and considering that we're still at war in other countries such as Iraq, where we accidentally killed 200 civilians in one bombing run a couple of weeks ago, I figured I should talk to someone who has been in the military, on the ground, in these fights. Not a top general whose rank relies on towing the military line, or one of these generals that's on all the media outlets towing the military line, but instead a regular retired infantryman. Ernest Miller IV served in Iraq, was injured in a car bombing, and received commendations for heroism and achievement. He's now retired and no longer supports our imperialist wars. Here's one of the most interesting conversations I think I've had. My conversation with Ernest Miller. Ernest, thank you for joining me here.
Thank you for inviting me, Lee.
I'm gonna keep it pretty broad to start off here. Just tell me about your time in the military and maybe what was most different from what you expected when you first joined up.
Well, I joined in 2000 in September, so really before there was any kind of craziness going on in the world as much as there is now.
Right.
And I joined the National Guard. I thought that I was really going to defend America. I knew that the Guard had not been sent outside the United States for a couple hundred years, especially in a combat role, and I was an infantry soldier. So I figured, you know, when we had blizzards in Maryland, or we had snowstorms or tornadoes or hurricanes.
You'd be the blizzard guy.
Yes, sir. I'd be driving doctors to hospitals and things like that. And if, you know, we had the North Koreans invaded or something, then then I'd be used for something like that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, obviously that changed very drastically. I got a phone call in 2002, where they said, hey, we're sending a whole battalion of infantry to Andrews Air Force Base to protect the president. And after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm inside of the United States. Let's see how this goes. And that was my first 14 months. Spent the whole time there and just saw some things that really changed the way I looked at what the military was, what its function was, I thought.
So what was that change?
I think the biggest thing for me when I was there was, you know, Jessica Lynch had been captured in the invasion of Iraq. You know, it later came out that she was unfortunately hurt, and the Iraqis had actually taken care of her, had her in a hospital, offered her back to us. Somehow then our special forces invaded.
Right, it turned out that a lot of that rescue was done like an after-school special. It was all kind of set up.
Yes, sir. Very much like the 540 million they just found out that we were producing ISIS videos with. The Pentagon paid a PR firm in England. It was the same kind of production. I was at Andrews the day she landed back in from Iraq. There was a convoy of something like 85 people, and it was really interesting to me. But that day, for the first time ever, I was sitting there guarding a C-5 Galaxy, which is an airplane that can hold two 70-ton Abrams tanks, and the only thing this thing was holding were pallets of cash. Taller than me, just front to back, top to bottom.
Incredible.
And I watched for almost 4 weeks while every single shift I had swings and mids. 2 to 5 of these would fly out. I didn't know where they were going. I don't see manifestos. Every single night that I was there.
Wow.
That wasn't on the news. All that was on the news was Jessica Lynch.
Pallets of cash, and I do remember, I don't know that those were the shipments, but I do remember that billions, I think it might have been $9 billion of pallets of cash went missing in Iraq. Like,
really?
Like, not like computer screen missing, but like pallets of cash.
Well, that makes a lot more sense now. I've never even seen a report on that, but that makes complete sense. I mean, it was for a full month. I was there for 13 months, and an entire month, C5s every day.
That's
just
crazy.
going, and not talking about it. I couldn't figure out what they would be for, what we could be using that
And
cash
so
for.
that kind of changed what you thought your job was as a soldier. Why am I protecting cash?
Yes, sir, completely.
Yeah.
Especially as an infantry soldier, why am I sitting here with pallets and pallets and pallets of this? And that really, I just kind of started asking questions to sergeants, and basically at that time I wasn't a sergeant, and they were told, hey, stay in your lane. There's really nothing you got to do. They told you to guard it, you guard it.
And did most of the troops you met in your time, did did they seem to care a lot about the reasons we're given, meaning the public, for why we're at war? We're bringing freedom to Iraq. We're bringing democracy. Like, was that on the top of their mind, or was it really just I'm either doing my duty or I'm looking out for my brothers and sisters?
A lot of it was that. As an infantry soldier, it was definitely a lot of looking out left and right. You're thinking you're the tip of the spear. You're going to be helping to protect people. That's really what I thought. You know, worst comes to worst, if I'm going to have to fight against people, it's going to be people that were invading the United States as a National Guardsman. And I get to Iraq, and a lot of these guys, they were happy. They were making more money than they ever had in their life. They weren't asking questions like that. But I remember the day that I got car bombed. The only person that really showed me any kind of concern was a young Iraqi boy. We drove back into the town with my Humvee was strapped on the back of a vehicle completely burned to the ground. Somehow I lived through it. My gunner and my dismounted soldier were hurt badly, Ronnie Raymond and Josh Eskett. Thankfully, they both lived. But that boy came up to me and hugged my leg and just pointed at my vehicle. I mean, his English was broken, but the concern on his face was palpable. I was later chastised for that. You know, like I was somehow conspiring with the enemy, a small kid who had given me...
Because you're injured and he hugs.
Yes, sir. Because, I mean, he had given me tea and things like this at our checkpoints and just little things. He lived right across the street from where our base was. And after that, I had some really hard times. I actually had a group of soldiers writing in a book about basically like I was the enemy. And if it wasn't for one of those soldiers leaving that guard book in a guard post and me finding it and seeing the things that they were writing about me and able to diffuse it, I'd have nightmares all the time about what could have happened. Because it was pretty derogatory stuff just because one kid had cared enough about me.
So it wasn't like you were going around trying to talk to people. It was just this one incident, or? Yeah,
basically. I mean, he had befriended me. I took a couple photos of him at our checkpoint, and it just ended up with a report. He would bring me tea, chai tea. It was very, very sweet of him. The kid was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I remember thinking, you know, the children, they're children. They're not some kind of terrorist or anything like that. This is as innocent as could be. And the vitriol that was aimed at me by my own soldiers who I had been injured trying to help drastically. Like I pulled 2 of those guys out of that Humvee. I ended up getting an Army Commendation Medal for Valor in Combat for what I did that day. But every other guy in my unit from that point on, for the most part, with the exception of a few sergeants that really stood up for me and helped to protect me basically, I was really kind of almost drummed out of that unit.
Have you given much thought to why that is? Why they feel so threatened by your simple actions? Is it because if they start questioning things, it's just it all unravels the lie of?
I would think that, you know, I tried to go to college after I got out, and I wasn't very good at it. I have a hard time reading now with what's happened in my head, but a term called cognitive dissonance comes in where,
absolutely,
you know, I'd never heard of that. I wasn't taught it in school. But when I realized that people have these things inside of them that they defend, and they might not necessarily understand why, just because of repetition or because of propaganda.
Right, and in order to make your actions fit with your beliefs, you know, you have this cognitive dissonance, and it's if I start questioning the war, then what have I done? And that's a very scary thing. So
exactly, and those kind of thoughts started leading me to find different sources of information for me to come into. You know, guys like Ryan Dawson on ANC Report, guys like you, guys like Dr. Steve Pachenik, like people that had served or were, you know, who I looked at as true American heroes that were dissenting voices against this very unbroken stream of information that I was being fed that, you know, a lot of people I feel like don't investigate. And so we kind of assume that what we're being told is true, and it leads to, you know, just look around, very disastrous things.
We started to get into it there, the mental ramifications of what goes on in war, or in our you know, in our actions with the military. I mean, there's been a lot of people now, at least, studying and looking into the mental stresses, but it doesn't seem like the military has changed the way they operate. I mean, people being sent back for tour after tour after tour without thoughts about the mental stress and the trauma.
Just speaking of myself, when I was activated again to go after my first Iraqi tour where I had been injured.
This is after the car bombing?
Yes, sir. I was injured in a car bombing August '05. I got back in July of '06. They did surgery on my ankle. I had hurt my ankle very badly. They had to do a debridement surgery so that I could even try to do a physical fitness test again. I was never able to pass one after that, but I still, even though I was having nightmares, I told them that I was having problems drinking. I was still activated and sent to Iraq again with 3 different drugs they gave me: a drug to sleep, a drug for anxiety, and a type of methamphetamine to
Oh my
apparently
God.
counteract all 3 of those.
So you told them that I mean, they knew you couldn't pass the physical fitness test, and you said, I'm having nightmares, I'm having these issues,
Yes, sir.
and they sent you anyway.
Pat me on the back. I still have the paperwork. You know, soldiers having sleep issues, issued medication is what the doctor at Fort Dix told me.
And what was that tour like when you were already?
I did the best that I could.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, where we were in Mosul, they mortared us a lot. And where our barracks were, I had mortars flying over my bed pretty much every couple of nights. And it was just something, psychologically, I'm not proud to admit it, but I started to break down even worse than I was. I was sleeping 2, maybe 3 hours every couple of days. I had a company commander who was really amazing and tried to protect me from a lot of the stuff, not really understanding how I even got there. But it got to the point where basically they said, look, you know, we don't think you can perform in combat anymore, and they evacuated me to Germany after almost 6 months of that tour.
And do they, like, do they try and prep soldiers for this? Like, hey, when these things happen, you're going to have this type, you're going to need this for your mental peace of mind. Is there any kind of prep for what you're going to be dealing with? Mentally, I mean?
Mentally, no. And basically, they had set us up, you know, how to react to explosions, how to react to certain situations, how to cordon someone and search them and all these type of things, but not how do you deal with seeing somebody that's been blown into 15 pieces that try to do that to you and your friends, how to react when you see half your friend's face hanging off, or,
Right.
or one of your buddies with his legs and all of his genitalia opened up. How do you react to that?
Right.
And I still don't know. I still see it almost every night, and I just try my best to deal with it.
It's incredibly difficult to deal with. I mean, people end up with PTSD from a car crash here in the States, and that has none of the other ramifications of being attacked, or we're at war, or seeing your friends die. Like, and that can give you PTSD. So, of course, these battles should be these scars, these mental scars should be dealt with and thought about. And our military, despite this insane budget, you know, the next 7 countries combined, and Trump wants to give 54 billion more. Despite all that money, they're not paying for a lot of the health care, like not enough of the health care when soldiers come back. And you mentioned before we started something about the armor. I was talking about how I had heard that a lot of soldiers try and purchase their own armor, or have to pay for their own armor.
Yes, right before my second tour, and while I was starting to have really pretty bad PTSD issues, just issues with sleeping and trying to cope with that as best as I could, I was told I was going to Iraq again, and had said, well, you know, I've heard of this stuff called dragon skin. I can lay on a hand grenade and I can walk away. It won't kill me. I'd like to purchase this and take this with me. And was told, if you do that, we will what's called remediate you. We'll give you an Article 15, which means take up to three months of your pay, and we'll take your body armor and not give you your money back.
That's insane. I mean, I can't even come up with the reason. I guess they don't want some soldiers to just be better equipped than others or something, but then we should be paying for everyone to have that armor. We got about 2 minutes left. Are there any thoughts you want people to leave with about our military, about your view of it now? I don't know if you've given thought to systemic changes you'd like to see.
Systemic changes, I mean, for me, I've been a Green Party member my whole life, since even when I was 17 when I joined the Army.
See, they shouldn't have let you join right there. Green Party.
In hindsight, you know, I voted for Mr. Nader, I voted for Mr. Paul, and unfortunately, I'm not proud to say it, but I did vote for Obama one time on the idea of hope and change. You know, we're going to close Gitmo, we're going to take all of my friends were going to come home from Iraq and from Afghanistan, you know, guarding opium fields.
He sold a good game. He was one of the only senators that came out against the Iraq War before it, or he wasn't a senator yet, but before it started.
Exactly, and it was just such good subterfuge that I took my most powerful thing, my weapon, and voted. And you know, now look at Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, Libya, these countries that we don't have a declaration of war against them, but we're bombing them. I'm tired of the deception. I feel like I'm very, very tired of being lied to. You know, war by deception is such a bad thing. Like, the truth can set us all free, I feel like. But however our access to that information happens, that is what controls our conversations, how we react with our own family, with our citizens of our nation, with everyone. And if we think we know something is true without researching it, it leads to so many problems that we're all just chasing our tails, and we can't even address the problem of why, the arts foundation is going to be cut and after-school programs are going to be cut, but our defense budget's going to go up $58 billion more. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I looked it up the other day, just the increase in the defense budget could fund the National Endowment of the Arts 350 times over.
Really?
That's just the increase.
Wow.
But you're absolutely right. Without information, none of this changes. So I want to thank you for getting this information out there and giving people a truth from the ground that most Americans will never see and never know.
I hope it's a perspective they appreciate, like I appreciate yours every week. And thank you for the chance.
Thank you. I hope things keep getting better for you.
Thank you, Lee.
We have to go to a quick break, but New York City, Chicago, Boston, and Washington, D.C. I have live shows coming up in your awesome cities. Email redacted tonight at rtamerica.tv for details and tickets. I'll be back in a second with more. Welcome back to Redacted Tonight VIP. So, we now have a new Supreme Court justice rammed through using what they call the nuclear option, Neil Gorsuch. In case you didn't read up on him, on Mr. Gorsuch, let me give you an example of what kind of human being this is, what kind of dude this is. In 2009, a driver from Trans Am Trucking named Alphonse Madden was hauling, you'll see what this has to do with Gorsuch in a minute, was hauling a load of meat through Illinois in sub-freezing temperatures. Whatever he's got in there, I don't know, chicken beaks and pig snouts or whatever, hauling meat. The brakes on his trailer froze in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. So he can't keep driving. He called his company, and his boss told him to stay in the truck while a repair crew came, even though they wouldn't be there for a few hours. And the temperature inside the truck was -7 degrees. So he goes to sleep, waiting for the repair people to come. He says, I awoke 3 hours later to discover that I could not feel my feet, my skin was burning and cracking, my speech was slurred, and I was having trouble breathing. The temperature that night was roughly 27 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. 27 below zero. Okay, first of all, why do people live in that part of the country? Get the out of there! Go! Anywhere that cold should be like where White Walkers go ice fishing, and that is it. That is all that area is used for. Nothing with should be in that area of the country. Ever. Ever. I'm sorry, Illinois, but ever. So eventually, Alphonse Madden, detaches the trailer, and he drove the front of the truck, which could still operate fine, he drove that to safety. He went to, he went to a gas station and warmed up. Probably put his in one of those little incubators they have for the hot dogs, the gas station. I don't know. They have rules against that. I know they got a sneeze guard, but they didn't say anything about balls, all right? I'm sure that's a discussion he had that night. It says no sneezing. It says nothing about balls. I just need to warm them up a little. Anyway, for leaving his truck behind, he was fired by that company. For leaving his load of meat, he was fired. Now, he sued the company for wrongful termination. In the appeals court, a 7-judge panel heard his case, and 6 out of 7 of them sided for Alphonse Madden. 6 out of 7 of them were like, yeah, of course you get the out of there. Any rational human being would get out of there. No truckload of frozen buffalo tongue is worth dying over. 6 out of 7 of them said that. Only one maniac, one lunatic, said that Alphonse had a legal responsibility to stay with his load of meat and just die. just prove his devotion to the corporation by dying there. That lunatic's name is Judge Neil Gorsuch. That is like the definition of a sociopath. That is a textbook example. They give that question to people in mental hospitals. And if you answer that the trucker should have to sit there and just die with his cargo, just freeze solid in eternal defense of his shipment of chicken livers and duck anuses, or whatever the he's hauling. If you say he should just give up his life for a pickled ham hock, and then if you answer that, they keep you in the mental hospital another 5 years and make sure you can only eat your meals with a spoon because you can't be trusted in your sharp utensils. Okay? That is, not only should Gorsuch not be a Supreme Court justice, he shouldn't be allowed near a fork. No sharp utensils. It should be in the vicinity of Gorsuch. But then again, the Supreme Court in general is nuts. It's nuts in general. It's antiquated. Lifetime appointment. Lifetime. What? First of all, they came up with the lifetime appointment stupidity back in like the 1700s when people lived to like 14 years old. That was the average. No one lived past 60. And if you made it to 70, they assumed you were a witch and they drowned you. And if you survived the drowning, then you were definitely a witch and they burned you. And then if you survived the burning, they made you sheriff. That's how that worked. Our forefathers were idiots on some things, and this is one of them. They were like, yeah, no one will ever live too long. No one. So we'll just make them a judge forever. Okay, sure, sounds good. Thanks for that, Jefferson or whoever, you face. Nowadays, human beings live to like 120. I met a guy the other day, 192. But the last 40, okay, even if it's, let's say it's 100, you live to 100, you live to 110. The last 40, the person doesn't know their name. And you gotta watch them to make sure they're not eating marbles and shit. Whatever's nearby, they're just scooping up, they're gnawing on a remote control. Like, can we agree the human specimen is not high-level functioning past maybe, I'd say, 85. 85, if you're lucky, 85. But sometimes people are wearing diapers by 65. You don't know. You don't know how it could be. But we just decided to roll the dice on the highest court in the land. Literally the top decision makers in our country probably couldn't be trusted to, like, navigate a web page or a metro system in a new city. They just honestly, if you took a lot of our justices and just dropped them in a metro in a new city they'd never been in, they just end up in a heap underneath the metro map. Just, I don't understand. I don't know why it's red, it's blue, it's the QR W. Do I want the people are paying with something that's not even money? It's like some sort of card. Where did they? Were we born? Were we given a card when we were born that I was never told about? I don't know. Think about this. There is no other job in the country that is for life. For life. None. Not one. The best you could hope for is some honorary position where they trot you out every couple of years and, you know, you wave at people with your dentures too big for your face. You just wave at people, and then they put you back in a closet for another couple years before they trot you out again. But that's not a job. That's a trophy. The lowest level thing, the guy in the factory who's in charge of, like, just tightening one bolt, that guy, they let him go at like 70. The boss pulls him aside and goes, "Hey, Carl, we found one of your shoes in the men's room. You took a dump in the potted plant, and we don't think you should be working here anymore. You know, we love you to death. But have you ever thought of doing something else, like sitting in a chair forever?" Supreme Court justice is one of the most important jobs in the country. Imagine any other crucial job, any other, like what's crucial? Like the guy they strap you to when you go skydiving for the first time. When you first go skydiving, they strap you to someone and you rely on them completely. That guy has your life in his hands. They didn't even tell you how to pull the cord. When I went, they didn't even tell me how. And so that guy, if he gets distracted by a pretty birdie, you're dead. You're both dead. That's all it takes. So would you pick an 85-year-old for that job? Would you just strap on to Betty White and go for it? What about a brain surgeon after a car accident? Would you just point at hey, there's a 95-year-old guy yelling at ATM because he thinks it's the Arby's window drive-through. I want that guy to do my brain surgery. No! You never pick that guy. Look, I'm not saying all older people are out of it, but plenty are. And we shouldn't give them the job till death do they part, all right? Highest level of our justice system. It's insane. Anyway, that's what I have for this show. You can get extra web exclusive content by texting the word redacted to 444-999. That'll sign you up to our email list. You can also get the podcast called Moment of Clarity. It's on iTunes and Stitcher. Good night and keep fighting.